you want, and then we can begin. If there's any doubt or request or anything of that sort, you can either say it out loud or put it in the chat window. Chat is allowed for anyone to send in their messages. Correct. Correct. I think let us proceed. Right. So, just a second. Yeah, correct. So we are here for the basics of Python, right? As I just gave you an introduction, again, we'll be looking at sort of the introduction, the applications, right? And some short functionalities, some things that we can do with Python, something that we can create. We'll go through a notebook of things that I've created. I've created a workshop notebook for all of you. I will send in the link to that for everyone to go through and try on their own. I will also share some practice questions at the end of the session, right? And so everyone has a good understanding of where they stand and how they want to sort of take this programming language forward, right? So let us just begin with some short introductions. So I'll give you a very short introduction of like me and how I work with Python. So I yeah, so I work with Python primarily for data analysis and mostly towards the machine learning and artificial intelligence domain. I have been teaching children and my classmates and batchmates Python just for them to learn something, and I'm very passionate about it, so I do it. And we go through basics of Python, very similar to what we'll be doing today. And also on the other side, I also mentor a group of research fellows tackling some of the most major problems that we're going through and facing. So that is how I work with Python. If there's anyone else who would like to share their journey with Python, they're most welcome to do so now. Like anyone can just turn on their cameras or mics and just go forward with it. Anyone, if you'd like to. I'm assuming there are no introductions to be made. If anyone would like, they can sort of put that as a message also in chat. That also is welcome. But if there are no introductions, we can move ahead. Otherwise, if anyone wants to just turn on their microphone, they can do it now. We can have a good interactive session and it will be a good discussion for all of us. That is wonderful. Mobile development, wonderful. So currently a few people have put in, others are also welcome too. So as I could see, some of the uses are MLAI and mobile development. There are a lot of applications of Python. We'll learn about them in further slides as well. But these are some things that I would love to cover. I am very passionate about specifically the machine learning AI side of it. I use that very regularly, and that is what I actually discuss and work on with my peers as well. Now, coming to this, we will be focusing on these, but this being a very preliminary sort of a session, we will be focusing on very basic things now, but we will be branching out into all these fields in the coming weeks. I also plan to have other instructors join me, people who work with. So, for example, if you talk about game development, if there are enough people interested, I would love to contact somebody who works in the industry or is sort of is a professional or a professor in a very renowned university. I would love to invite them to give us a session on that domain, right? So that is also something that we'll be going through, but in future sessions, right? Correct. So we'll just, I think, move ahead. We'll go ahead. So we will just look into some applications of Python. So primarily, as you can see in the chat itself, we've got about two or three of those. But there are several things that you can do with Python. You might not even realize you might be using some of the other Python-based tool or service in your daily lives, right? If I had to give you an example, you can see a lot of them here, but you can very clearly see we can do web development. You can have Python APIs in the backend. You can use Django or Flask. These are two sort of frameworks that you use. Right, you can have desktop GUI build. This works with PyQt. You can use image processing. This is sort of OpenCV. So you might be seeing that on roads nowadays, before every signal, before every traffic signal, you have those cameras, right? They look at your car. If you're overspeeding, they detect that. They look at your car, recognize your number plate, right? They read the number plate. How are they able to do it? One way to do it is through image processing, right? We use sort of an OCR, which is known as objective character recognition. So we just sort of capture a picture, we recognize the characters, the digits, and we can store them. So that is how this works. I'm sure many of you must have faced this, right? Other things are, for example, you use Cam Scanner or some simple scanning application. You click a picture, you can simply see that it automatically crops the document for you, right? It is detecting the edges and the contours using image processing, right? That is one major application. You must have used Google Lens. It recognizes the item that you're focusing on, right? So these are things that you can do with Python, and these are projects that I would love to work with you and instruct you on. But these are something that we'll be again looking in the future sessions. There are business applications which sort of give you, say today, if I'm selling, I have a store, I'm selling something. I want to know what products are selling well. I want to know what products to order more. I want to know how many people like this, right? I could sort of also predict how many, if I'm selling 100 boxes of chocolate now, right? Every day I'm selling 100 boxes of chocolates. How many do I need to order in advance for the next month? I want to predict based on my growth rate, based on previous year statistics. I want to know, I want to be prepared for it. These kinds of applications are very common with Python. There is game development, there is text processing, there are a lot of other things. So this slide is majorly for to tell you that if you are a Python professional, what can you actually do? You can take training sessions as I am doing today. You can create such image processing or data analytics applications. So the misconception that people still have is that computer science graduates or engineers are the ones that need to focus on Python. Anyone who wants to say go from a business development person or a commerce student, a business student, if they want to go from a business development to a data analyst, for somebody who wants to analyze the problems that they want to solve. I can solve the business problem, but if I cannot analyze and sort of understand the data, I need another person, right? If I'm good at it, I can do that completely by myself. That creates a ocean of opportunities for everyone, right? Other things also include audio and video pre-processing, data and data analysis, visualization, numeric applications. There are scientific researchers. They use a lot of tools to analyze the data that they're looking into. So these are minute details that maybe people miss when they're trying to draw conclusions, right? But Python or any other computational, to put the computational power in using Python or any other tool or any other language, you will see results that you probably would have missed. You wouldn't have drawn these conclusions, right? So these are some basic applications of Python, right? Now we will focus on installing Python. I am assuming everyone has their laptops with them, laptops or iPads or PCs, whatever. Like if you could just speak up or like put in the chat or something. Correct. So I can see a couple of yeses. Okay, perfect, perfect, perfect. This works for us. Perfect. So already installed. That is wonderful if you've already installed. We will look at two ways to do it, right? We will look at the pure installation method on your systems, and we'll also look for a method that makes your life very, very easy, right? So I'll just give me a second. I'll share my screen to that Chrome tab. Just a second. Correct. Yep. So I'm assuming my screen would be visible to all of you, right? Perfect. So I want you to open a link here. This is the easiest method for you to install Python, and this is what I would recommend everyone to do so. So you just put in this link. I'll send that in the chat window as well. Right. So once you open this link for the first time, you will be sort of greeted with this, and this would be empty for you, but this is the kind of screen that you'd be greeted with, right? This is Google Collaboratory. So what they've created is that for research professionals, Google gives you the hardware necessary. So today, 5 years prior or 2, 3 years prior, you need to get high-end computer systems even for medium to sort of medium-ish computation using Python data science and data analytics. Today, Google gives you that for free. All you need is a Google account. You open this in your browser and you log in with your Google account and you're good, right? You are being given very, very powerful systems with graphic processing, that is GPUs. Many of you who might be using some gaming laptops or gaming PCs might be aware of this, but we sort of use very strong graphic processing units for gaming and everything. That is something that we also use for data analytics, right? Visualization and machine learning and artificial intelligence, neural networks, and all of that, right? So Google gives you that for free. Just let me know if all of you were able to open this and sort of log in, and you were greeted with this kind of a window. Correct, correct. This is good. One thing that I would like to request all of you is that if it is possible for all of you, you can turn on your cameras, right? And we can move ahead. Correct. So once you reach to this kind of a window, all you should do is sort of click on New Notebook. And once you do that, you will, like, it'll take a couple of seconds. But once you do that, you will be greeted in a new notebook which is created. This on the back end, the thing that you cannot see, this is okay. So this is a Jupyter notebook. Jupyter notebooks are what we call a sort of, this is a Python notebook, right? This, you greeted with this, and you can use this to code and this to sort of do what we are trying to do today and in the future, right? These notebooks are saved automatically, so you don't need to download and keep them. The next time you log into Colab, you'll be able to see all these notebooks. I'll just show that to you as well. Just a second, sorry. Yeah. So we just created a notebook. We again, when we go back to collab.sh.google.com, we're again greeted with the same window, and we can see the recent notebook. So the first one is of course welcome. The next one comes to be the untitled notebook that we created, and we can see when it was first opened, when it was last opened, all of that, right? So it is easy for you to save and keep the files that you've created, correct? So we can do any sort of thing here. This is like the most basic program you can think of, right? Uh, I would love if you guys would also try it with me and just put in a yes if you did. Great. So if you want to run it, you can press on this play button, or you can press shift plus enter. So the shift and the enter key, if you press them together, it will run and you'll see your output. It will take a couple of seconds for you to connect and sort of that initializing and connecting to a kernel. Once that happens, you'll see a green tick here, and then you can simply just put in a code and press shift enter and it will be executed, right? This is the direct way of doing things using Google Colab. Now, I would also like to show you how to properly install this on your system, right? If you don't want to use, say, Google Colab, you want to use a local machine for development, all you have to do is go to the next, just type, I will send the link as well. You just type Anaconda Python, correct? You come to this page, the individual edition. You go here, you go down, and you can see the download button, right? I will share that link, share this link in the chat as well. Just a second. Yeah, and you can just click on download. You'll be brought down. You choose your operating system. For me, it is Windows. For you, it might be Linux or Mac OS. You just click on whichever you want to go for. You click on this, it will download in a couple of seconds. and then you can simply you can ignore this page completely. This is sort of purchasing the full commercial version. But here, as soon as this gets downloaded, you can go through these steps and install Python in your system. Correct? I already have Python installed, not through Anaconda, but I'll just show you this process as well. Just give it a couple of seconds, I think 5, 10 seconds more to go. Yeah. Now, I'm assuming are others also downloading this? Would love to see a yes in the chat or for you to unmute and say yes. Others? Okay, perfect. Perfect. We have a couple of yes. Okay, so whoever has it already installed, that is wonderful. PyCharm is good. Okay, Avishkar, I will put the link again. All you have to do is click on this link, go click on download. You will be brought. I'll open it again. Yeah, you will be as soon like you'll be brought here. You click on download. You are brought here, right? If you already have if you have a Windows machine or PC or a laptop, you simply just click here on the 64-bit graphical installer, right? If you have a Mac system, then click on this, or if you have an Ubuntu or Linux-based system, you just click on this, correct? You click here, it will get downloaded, and once it does, it will open up like this. Tell me if you have it open. Others also, if you could download and open this. People who already have it, that's fine. You can just go through the process once again. If others who are installing have opened up this window, just put in a yes in the chat and then we'll move forward. Correct. We can wait for a couple of minutes. We'll wait for 3 to 5 minutes for everyone to download this onto their machine and then we'll start these steps. Others, is it downloaded for you yet? Correct. I can understand it will take a couple of minutes more for people who are downloading it just yet. We will wait for 2 more minutes and then we'll start installing. And what I have done is that at the end, correct. So at the end, what I will do is I will share a WhatsApp group link and I have already created these installer instruction videos, both through the Google Colab version, this version, and the other things that you could try and other platforms you could try if these don't work for you. All those would be shared in that group as a collection of links, so you can follow them as well. We'll just wait for one more minute till everyone's ready, and then maybe we can start. Hi, so we are planning to have this session, like these kinds of session every single week, and sort of we can increase the frequency or decrease the frequency based on demand. Again, as I mentioned in the beginning as well, I am very much open to putting this into two batches of, say, an advanced version that is going on, and also sort of a beginner's version, right? So we can look into that. Again, as I said, I will be sharing a WhatsApp group link at the end, and everyone can join into that group and I will share details there. And we can also take requests as people would like. Correct. I'll just share my screen, the complete screen. Just let me know if my screen is visible to everyone, and then maybe I can start installing. And the people who are yet to download or are still downloading, they can relax. I will be sharing videos and instructions in the group that I'll be sharing at the end. Correct? So I'm assuming my screen is visible. I'll start. You can put in a text maybe. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Right. So I just click on next. Correct. I have just you can read it if you want. You can just simply click on I agree. You can click on just me here, and then you can sort of choose the destination folder, right? So I will go here and I will create a new folder, Anaconda, right? And I will install it inside it. Once I do this, I go to next. I can see that you want to add this or do this. You just click on this and you can click on install. You do not uncheck that. I uncheck that because I already have Python installed separately. You can leave that checked as it is and just click on install. That is all you have to do. This is a very next kind of a process. You don't have a lot to tweak here. This is the location of your installation and you can go ahead. It will take a couple of seconds for it to completely install on your system. If there are any queries, I would like you can just put them in the chat or unmute yourself. Otherwise, like I can handle them as you ask. Those who haven't downloaded or couldn't download due to any reason, I again will be sharing the instructions at the end. And for this session, this is more sort of an interaction session and introduction session. So I'll be going through the details and we will be going hands-on at the very end. And even that can be done later. As I said, we are recording this session that will be shared with everyone. Perfect. So it is just setting up the base. It is just installing. It takes a couple of seconds. Correct. So it's not having quite some time. Yeah, Achintya, it does take some time. Is there a disadvantage of using Anaconda? I generally recommend Anaconda because it does most of the work for you. Once I open it, you can see it will automatically install and set up Jupyter Notebooks, Jupyter Labs, everything for you. So it makes it sort of easy for a beginner to get into. Plus, it is the tool of choice for people who work with data science and who want to go into that field. It's majorly recommend that because it's very easy to install and it's very beginner user friendly. Correct. So, like others, have you reached this completed phase yet? Oh, I'm so sorry, I missed the second message from you. It's give a useful point on development apps. App development is something that we'll get into later. We will be evaluating these and sort of comparing them to understand where to go forward with, but that's a very different discussion. PyCharm versus Anaconda. Um, I think if you have either, it should do. Like at least for with the purpose that we are here, any of them should do. I prefer Anaconda due to the easy way of installing and using, but either of them would do. Correct. So we have completed. I'll just go to next. If there are any queries regarding installation or otherwise, you can keep putting them in the chat window. Correct. So here I can see that everything is installed and I click on next. The Anaconda individual edition tutorial or getting started. You can open this. You will sort of be greeted with an introduction and a tutorial. Otherwise, you can simply go ahead. I think we're good to go. So I click on finish. Right. Now, if I click on my Windows icon, I can see that a lot of things have been installed. So here I just open this Anaconda Navigator, right? It is called Anaconda Navigator. You open this, you will be greeted with a window with everything. So as you can see, it is initializing. It just takes a couple of sort of longer time the first time you start it up, but it's a fast process from then on. Correct. So I'm assuming everyone can see this. So you can see a lot of services are sort of already installed and ready to launch from here. So the biggest advantage of using Anaconda is that it sets up everything for you. Correct. You can even like use Anaconda as your main Python and maybe use PyCharm with it. You can also connect your collab with your local system. Not related to Anaconda, but that is something that you can do. Correct. So here you can see a lot of things. The one that you should open should be the Jupyter Notebook. Correct. You see this Jupyter Notebook. There are two, Jupyter Lab and Jupyter Notebook. You go to the notebook. Is that clear to everyone? A message in the chat, please, if it is. Okay. Correct. So you just simply click on launch and you can see that something's happening here. And within a couple of seconds, you should have something. So it's prompting me to choose which browser I want to. So I just say OK for Chrome and I just push that to the other monitor. And here we are. So I'm assuming everyone can see this. So this is sort of showing me the files that I have currently. There might be a Python file in all of this. If not, I can simply click on new from here, choose Python 3, correct? And it'll create a new notebook for me. As you can see, this does look a little bit different from this, but it is fundamentally the same thing. It is actually a Jupyter notebook that is being run on Google Colab, that is Google servers, Google systems. And this is a Jupyter notebook running on your own system. So I'll just show you. We'll just run the same piece of code. Correct. I have print hello world here, and again I've printed hello world. So the advantage of using your own local Jupyter deployment is that you don't have to be worried about your internet access, or maybe if you have, say, you have multiple people, so you can sort of work on your own in your own system, keeping your data and notebook to yourself. So you can do all of that here. That is why you use local deployments. But and you also do that when you have, say, a system that is more powerful than the Google servers. That's the service that Google is providing to you, right? So you use your local machine, you use your own system, you do that. Correct. The advantage of using Google Colab is that you do not have to manage your file, which you otherwise would have had to in your local deployment of Anaconda and Jupyter Notebook. Correct. And also, it makes it a little bit easy for multiple people to work on it. Multiple people cannot work on notebooks simultaneously, but if you want many people to sort of work, so maybe I work from morning 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., then from 6 p.m. to 12, somebody else works. So I just simply click here and I can send it to anyone. Correct. And I can give them the editor access. Correct. So they can edit the notebook. They can sort of fix. So for example, I'm doing a lab and I want my professor or my mentor or one of my friends to improve the code. Or for example, I'm having an issue. I say that, hey, could you please solve it for me? You simply give them the access. They'll go through it. They do it. Correct. You cannot do that in real time. That creates a lot of problems here. I think they're working on a version of Colab where you can properly use it in real time. But currently, this is the best that we're getting. Correct. So this is exactly how you install, and all of you have this. Correct. There are other ways as well. I have Python installed locally and I use that in Visual Studio Code. I use that because I do all of my coding in VS Code, and not only Python, I also do web development and other technologies. I work with them, and VS Code is my go-to editor. So I do everything here. That is why I've put my the Jupyter Notebook here. The way to do that, many people already have VS Code. The way to do that is simply to click on extensions and search for Jupyter. So I have that. I have the Jupyter Notebook installed. But you also need to have Python installed, and that is something you can also do from your Microsoft Store. So if you just open up your store and search for Python, you will be able to see Python 3.9, 3.8. These you can install, but these work with your CLI, the command line interface, the CMD, right? So you can use it here. So this is something that you use here. So as you can see, I've opened Python, so I can say print hello world. And oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah. So I just put print hello world and I print it. Yeah. So I can see this is the same Python we're using. This is a Python in the command prompt, the command line, and that is a Python notebook. And that is what you should do for projects, right? It does make more sense to go through a notebook because it's a structured approach to a Python-based project, right? You create a Python file mainly when you want, say, some code to be in one file, which you call through another file. So then a file helps you, plus a distributable. You always create a file when you want to distribute the code and the entire program, correct? So I'm assuming this is clear to everyone and everyone has either some version installed or if they can't, they can install later. Just give me a good to go or a yes in the chat, and I would appreciate if someone would turn their mics on or cameras on and say something. That also works.
Good to go.
Perfect. Perfect. Others also in the chat or mic or anything. Correct. So we have a couple of yeses. Okay, so we'll move ahead. So currently, I'll just rehash what we've done. We've installed, we've understood the applications of Python. Now we'll just talk about some basic data types and how do we start that. I'll just share the window again. Yeah, correct. Do let me know when my screen is visible to you in the chat maybe or speak up. Is my screen visible to all? Perfect. 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 So now we'll just move into the data types of Python. In Python, so primarily, uh, let us divide this into two parts, right? One could be assigning variables, the other could be structures or sort of a way of putting the data into one structure, right? So I'll just tell you what a variable is. A variable is primarily a name that I allocate to a value that I can change. Correct. So today, if I say that A is a variable, right? I can put A equals to 1. I can put A is equal to 20. I can change that to A is equal to banana. I can change A is equal to 400. I can change the value. This is a variable, right? A constant is something that you create once and you cannot change the value. So for example, my name is a constant. I'm not going to change it, right? So Aryan Kapoor is a constant which I'm not changing, correct? The color of my shirt would be a variable that I will change, right? So there's just a very trivial example that I want everyone to understand. So this is what a variable is. Now a variable can be of many types, right? If you ask me my age, that would be a number. If you ask my name, it would be a word, or in other words, in Python, we would say word, paragraph, text, any sort of text that would be a string, correct? And so my name would be a string, right? If you ask my percentage in tenth, or it might be a say XYZ dot the decimal, so it becomes a float. A float is nothing but a decimal number. You can name that as a float, correct? Now, many of you who have gone through uh, advanced mathematics and who understands this, there are complex numbers that are of the format saying 1 plus I, correct? So that is what a complex number is. These are just basic data types. So text type would become string, numeric type would be the number, that is my age, 20, 21, 22. See, these are complete numbers. These are natural numbers. We go through them. And we like not natural numbers exactly. These are numbers and they can be in the negative as well, right? Float is a decimal number that is 21.5, 21.6, right? Complex number is 1 plus I, 1I, 1J, correct? Now we'll go into the structures of data that, as I mentioned, we will be focusing on these data types in the coming slides and also in the complete notebook that I'll be showing you at the end of this sort of introduction. So we have, say, a list. So if you ask me, what all do I like to eat? If it is only one thing, I can say it as a string, correct? I can say an apple. I like to eat apples. I just say apple as a string, correct? Correct. So I say apple as a string. Correct. Now in a list, I would have said if I like apple and bananas and cherries, I say that as a list. Apple, banana, cherry. Correct. I can do the same as a tuple. Correct. Apple, banana, cherry again. As you can see in the example here as well. So I have the example of these types, the data types and structures. Correct. Dictionary. I'll just tell you in short what a dictionary is. So, for example, I want to say, I want to note down the names of everyone here, right, with the company of laptop that they use it, right? So it will be Apple for somebody, it will be Lenovo for somebody, it might be HP for somebody. So I store it as Aryan, and the value is ASUS, right? It might be A Apple, B Lenovo, correct? So this is sort of a dictionary in which there are keys that is our names Aryan A B C D E, and there are values that are HP, ASUS, Apple, etc. Correct? And that is exactly how a dictionary would work, correct? And a Boolean is sort of a flag. So if you ask me, is I can say that is Aryan a guy? Correct, that would be true, right? If I say is 10 greater than 5, it will be a true. If I say is 15 greater than 25, it will be false. So this is what a Boolean is, correct? So these are basic data types, right? You have to just go through this. This is sort of the theory and the basics of how everything works, correct? I'm just giving you the basic introduction into this. When I go to the notebook, I'll just show you everything right from printing, variable assignment, then we'll go to data types, right? You will see all of that. Now we'll just move ahead. Is this clear to everyone? Is data types clear to everyone? Put in a yes. Okay, perfect. So I'll just ask a question. I would expect you to put the answer in the chat or speak up, correct? If I have to tell my name, what data type would I use? A string. Okay, perfect. If, for example, I have to tell my phone number, what do I use? Integer. Perfect, perfect, perfect. If, for example, I have to tell you what is the temperature today, what do I use? Float. Perfect. Perfect. Well done. So you guys have a very good idea of what we're doing. And I think somebody pushed a question in between what's the difference between list and float. We will be looking into that in a couple of slides. It can be int two. You are right, it can be integer, but if I tell you that it is 35 degrees today, that is the right thing to do. But if it is 35.5 degrees, wouldn't that be a better answer? Like there you can have temperatures as decimals as well, right? Correct, exactly. Exactly, perfect. So I am assuming this is clear to everyone. I got very good answers. Well done, everyone. And now we'll just go move ahead. Correct. Now we are sort of seeing how strings work. Correct. This is how strings would work. Just we just sort of printing words in a different manner, right? You can just go through this. You can see how it is happening. But we will be practicing, and I will be showing this to you in that notebook. This is just something to for you to know that where we stand. Correct. So when I say, as you can see, B is equal to a string. Correct. Hello world. Very similar to what we printed a couple of seconds ago. Right. Now, when I say print B and I put a square bracket inside, that means that I'm accessing characters out of this, right? If I would have put, okay, we'll just show this to you, and I will show it to you. So whenever, say I put B and only two in the bracket, I would have received only the second character that I'm looking at, correct? In Python, counting will always begin from zero, correct? I will go from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think we've made a mistake here. This is a little wrong. It would not happen this manner. We would be the second, so we will start from L, correct, not from H. So if we had put 0, comma 5 here, then we would have had a hello, correct? So this is a mistake on my part. I will show it to you. Just a second. Just I can share the entire screen and maybe I'll show it to you. Correct. Do let me know if my screen is visible. Okay, perfect. So I'll just move on to where is it? Oh yeah, correct. So this is our Python notebook. So I say A is a variable and I put here say hello world. Correct. So I've put this here. Would you guys just put in the chat what data type it is? String. Perfect. Right. So I run this. I have saved A is equal to hello world. Now if I want to I want to print the second character in this string. So what would I put inside the bracket? The second character. Character is A, B, C, D, E. One. Perfect. Because we are starting the counting from zero here. Correct? And that is why 0 becomes the first character, that is H. E becomes the second character, that becomes 1. Correct? So I say put 1 here. So I should get E. As so all of you were right. And here we go. Correct? Now if I want to print from the first character to the fifth character, I put in A 1, 2, 5. Correct? And what this would do is it would start counting from E and it would go to it will start counting the first character, first index to the last index minus one. So what this actually means is that we put A starting to ending, and but what would get printed would be starting comma dot ending minus one. Correct? This is how it would get printed, and this is how it would work, right? So what do you think? What would be printed when I run this code? Others also, you can just put in your answers in the chat. Okay, so we'll just run it. Here, you can see ELLO, correct? As I said, it went for the first, second, third, fourth, as I said, ending minus one. Is that clear for everyone? Was everyone like able to understand what happened here? I can take another example as well if you'd like. You can just say that in the chat. Okay. So again, we'll go with the same word, hello world, right? Now I want to print from, I just want to print hello. What should I put? Put just I have to put a starting and an ending. Put that in the chat. What should I type here? That is what I will do, and we'll see. Correct. So I've got two answers. Both are correct. By default, if I don't put anything here, if I let it be blank, this is equivalent to 0:5, because when it's empty, it automatically takes it to be 0. I'll just show that to you. So here I've printed hello, and everyone was right. And if I do not put 0 here, I will again print hello, because if it is empty, it takes it to be 0. Correct. Every one of you is right. Well done. Now we will, I'll show you some more things, and we'll go back to the slides once, right? Here, in the second example, we are looking at concatenation. So what we are doing is we are sort of joining two words, correct? I'll show that to you here as well. So A is equal to hello, correct? And B is equal to world. Correct. This is what we've done. Now, if you would have noticed, A was hello world, right? But I was able to change the value of A because A is a variable. As I said in the beginning, right? Variables are names of values that you can change, correct? So here we've changed the value of A from hello world to hello. So if I print A now, I will be able to see a hello. But if I would have done that here, just a second, yeah. See, if I print A here, it is hello world, but I've reassigned A just to be hello instead of hello world, and we can now see that A has now become hello. Correct. So this is how variable. This is how we've reassigned the value of A from hello world to hello. Now we will join these two words and have something like print something. Correct. So hello and world separately do not make sense for us. What we do is we write print, we say A, we say plus, we say B, correct? Now what this would do would print hello world for us, but it will skip the space, correct? Give me one. Yeah, sorry. Correct. So this is how it is done. Now there are other ways to do this as well. You could have, instead of adding a plus, you could have added a comma. So what a comma does, a plus, what it does is joins the two entities, the left and the right, they are joined. A comma, what it does is it places the second entity close to the first one. So you'll be able to see it automatically adds a comma. That means the separator that we are using is equivalent to a space. By default, separators in Python are equal to space. We will look into that. Who's this? Is this acceptable? A plus B. Yes, perfect. I was just coming to that. Well done. This is exactly what we were going to do next. So very well done. You have stumbled upon the right answer. So what we are doing right now is adding a comma. But if we want to say join the words, what we do is we put A, we join a space in between, and then we put a B. So what this actually means is that we are joining the two words, and they would again join without a space, but we are joining a third word which is a space, correct? So now what does this do? It creates a space. Now just to explain it a little better, if I would have written Aryan here, I would have gotten hello Aryan world, right, without any space again, because I am simply joining the two, correct? I'm assuming this is clear to everyone. Well done, Angela. Perfect. Perfect. Correct. So this is how we sort of join two words and bring them together. Correct. Correct. So now we will look at how printing works, some formatting in printing. So for example, instead of printing it directly, I say C is equal to A plus space plus B, correct? So this would, though it is the same thing, but if I have to print, I simply say print C and it prints hello world. Now I want to say that the joined word is, see, how do I do that? I simply write the joined word is, I make the sentence. Now how do I put in C? One way to do that is, again, we are just joining two pieces of words. We just add a plus, we click on C, right? But that would eat up our space, right? So as you can see, there is no space here. Plus, it is just joining the two. If I put a comma, it would add the space and it would place them together. This is how formatting works. This is how you print variables when you say I have, again, as we when we will create the calculator, we will not simply give the result. We will say your addition is equivalent to, then we would add the variable. Correct. So this is how you print a variable properly with string formatting. Correct. So this is how it would work. Another way of doing the same thing is, I put it here. So I'll just show it to you. So here you can see this is what we did right now. Here we just use format to put it there. So if you have multiple variables, what we would have to do, if for example I want to say the word A, correct? I add this, I add another comma, I add this, and I put another this, I put another comma, B, comma, this. When joined, the word becomes C. Correct. This is not a wrong way of doing it. I am achieving what I wanted to, but this is not a very good way to do it. Correct. What I could have instead done was print the word. Um, I can also show you in the slides. You can see that I just add curly brackets wherever I want to add the variables. Correct. So the words I add curly bracket here, and this when joined become this. I put dot format, put brackets here. As you would say, dot format, I put brackets, and I sort of comma, I put all the values separated by commas. So I say A, comma B, comma C. Correct? So this would see the words hello and world when joined become hello world. Right? This does take away my space. I haven't put a space here, but yeah. So as you can see, this is how it works. Is this clear to everyone? Is this something everyone understands? Achintya, you can do this on your own screen. It is preferred like you do it along. But right now I'm just introducing you to things. I will be taking you on a step-by-step sort of do it with me hands-on in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, Aryan, can you explain the formatting again?
Correct, perfect. So when we print, if you can see here, I had to add a lot of commas and everything, and not always will I have my variables at hand, and I want to put them in the middle of strings. If I have a huge paragraph, correct, I don't want to sort of create commas and it complicates the. Plus, this is barely readable. It is difficult for me to understand where the variables are coming from. Correct. So I'm sorry. So what I've done here is that I've created these curly braces indicate where the values should go. And when I put them into dot format and I add the values, they simply take their place in order of appearance, right? So if I say put C comma B, they would simply switch the order. So it becomes hello and hello world, then it comes world, which is of course wrong, but this is a way to understand. So all you do is you write the sentence as you normally would. Instead of the variables, you place a curly bracket, and at the end you put dot format, and in the bracket you put the positions. You can also change the positions inside the by mentioning index numbers in the middle, but that is something that you don't need to do, but you can do if you have, say, the same form as the same variables appearing multiple times. Correct? So you do that and you can see the values coming out. Sorry. Correct. So you do that and you can see the values being printed multiple times. So is this understood by everyone? We can move ahead. Correct. So I'm getting a few positive responses. We can move ahead. Correct. So as you can see again, what we did. My name is John. I am 90, right? So I am 90. Just joined in a number instead of printing it with it. It could also be that I say A is equal to 90, age is equal to 90, and then and instead of 9 plus 90 here, I simply write plus age. Correct. Here, dash is more than dash, then 30 comma 20. So because 30 is more than 20. right? So they printed something. Is that clear to everyone? These examples are clear. Do you want me to go through more examples, or should we move ahead? Okay, so I've received one for ahead. Okay, so we move ahead. Right. Now we will look into mathematical operators. So mathematical operators actually deal with your addition, subtractions, correct? So you have addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Modulus is equivalent to taking a remainder. Exponentiation is sort of putting to the power of. So 2 to the power of 3 would be 2 asterisk asterisk 3, correct? Floor division is base division. So if I divide 13 by 10, my base division, it would reduce that to 3, correct? So that is how mathematical operators would work. These are the base operators. We will be using that in the final project that we'll be doing today, correct? The calculator, right? Now these are the assignment operators. They are a lot to look at once in your screen, but this is primarily a short way of writing things. So instead of, if you can see here, x equals to x plus 3, I can write it as x plus equals to 3. This is just a short way of writing it, correct? And you can see them right here. So remainder x, remainder of 3 would be x is equal to x of x remainder 3. So what this means is now my x is equal to remainder of like x, when x is divided by 3, the remainder, correct? So here it would mean that x is now equal to x plus 3. So if my x was equal to 10, now x would become 13. Is that clear for everyone? Pankaj, Aniket, both. These are base divisions, floor division. We will look into it. Just give me a couple of seconds, a minute actually, minutes actually. We'll move to that notebook, and you'll be able to see exactly where we are and what everything does. Correct? I'll show you the functionality. This is base division. Is this clear? May I move ahead? I think yes. Okay, perfect. So here, these are comparison operators. So as you would normally say equal to, you in Python, equal to is two equal things. Okay, so equal, right? So if I want to say A is equal to B, I say A equal B. These are when I use them in conditions, in as operators. When I normally want to assign a value, I simply say A equal to whatever value, correct? I'll just show it to you. So if I say A is equal to 10, again, as the variables, I can change the value. B is equal to 20, right? I say print A, I can print 10, and if I say print B, I will get 20. Now, if I say A equal to 10, sorry, A equal to B, what would this do? Like after this, if I print A, what would I get? If anyone wants to put that in the chat. Correct. So as you can see, 20. So we've assigned that value. Now, once we move into conditionals, I will also show you where these operators are used. Correct. Now we'll move ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah. So now we're moving to the collections in Python. So the list, tuple, set, dictionary that we just discussed. Now we'll focus on them. So here's an example and how they are sort of denoted and how we create them. So lists, square bracket, lists, any kind of variable can come here. Tuple is a normal bracket, right? The parentheses that we use. Set is the curly bracket. Dictionary is the curly bracket, but with keys, colon value, comma, keys, colon value, right? This is the basic notation for these data types. We will look into this into the notebook in a couple of minutes. Okay. Now I'll just show you the difference between them all. I think many of you like had this doubt. We'll just go through that. So these are the base definitions. I have not created this. I've taken this from an online website. If you'd like, I can share that with you as well. But here we can see the representation, the bracket, the parentheses, curly bracket, curly braces, correct? And here, if you can see, list contains duplicate items. Tuple does that. Set will not allow duplicate items. Correct? And dictionaries, they can allow duplicate values, but they won't allow duplicate keys. That means if I'm storing everyone's name here, so if I'm scoring, say, everyone's name with their 10th percentage, I can have similar percentage, but the name should not be the same. Correct? So that if tomorrow somebody asks me what is Aryan's percentage, I have only one value that I need to pull. Correct? Right. Now in a list, A list can be used nested. So we can have, say, a nested like a list inside a list. That is something that you can do. Right? We have examples here. This is the function to create a list. So for example, you just want to create a list, you do not want to use the notation. You click on, use the type list, bracket, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It creates a list for you. Same goes for tuple, set, dictionary, right? Now, more than this, now we'll look at the real differences. A list is mutable. That means we can change the values of a list. And that means that if I have, say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I simply write list bracket 2. That means the third value, as it starts from 0, 1, and 2. I change the third value equals to 30. So now my list would be 1, 2, 30, 4, 5. Right? If I do that in a tuple, that would give me an error because a tuple is immutable. We cannot make any changes. If you want to change a tuple, you change it completely, right? That is how a tuple works. Now a set is mutable, correct? But there is no way for you to have duplicate items. So a set, if I add 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, if I have it in a list and they convert it into a set. So to convert any data type to any data type, so if I want to convert a list to a set, A is equal to my list. I simply write set parenthesis and I put A. So now that is a set, all repeated values will go away. Correct? Now a list is ordered, you can make that ordered. Tuple is ordered, set will be unordered, a dictionary is ordered. Correct? So these are just simple things. You can see an empty, again, way to create lists and dictionaries, again the parentheses. This is exactly how data types are created and used. Is the difference clear to everyone? Like, I would like to see yeses maybe in the chat, or you can speak up, anything. Okay, so I have a couple of yeses, and we can move ahead. Right. Now we look into conditional statements and loops. We are just going to go through these. We are not going to focus on these because I would be just sort of introducing you to them, but we will be doing them in detail in the next session. Correct? Pankaj, if we give in set, it will only take one. Yeah, exactly what I said. That set will not allow duplicate items. If I put 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 there, it will show me only 110. Correct? Right. So my conditional statement is sort of my if else. So it means this or not this. So if I say, as you can see, A is 10, B is 20. If A is greater than 20, A is greater than B, sorry. So 10 is not greater than 20, right? So that would be false. So I will not be using this. This line will not be printed. The values in the bracket, if they are true, then the lines inside them will be printed. Else, it will just move ahead. So if A is equal to B, we know that 10 is not greater than 20. That is why this line will be skipped. We'll go to the next line. It says else if. Elif is short for else if. If not this, then this. That is what elif means. So we say is to B greater than 10. We know that 20 is greater than 10. So we print B is the largest. In case we had both the values, say A is 10 and B is 10, we would have skipped this, gone to the third one. If I am not great, A is not greater than B and B is not greater than A, that means A is equal to B. Correct? So I just say print A is equal to B. Correct? So this is how conditional statements work. Is this clear to everyone? We will, again, as I said, we will be doing it very properly in the next session. And also you can get a brief idea of it when we open the notebook. Perfect. Perfect. Now, again, we are looking at loops. Again, as I said, basic introduction. We will be moving into these ahead. Correct. So, a while loop is means that as long as a condition is true, which means jab tak till the time this is true, we move ahead. Correct. So if I say I is equal to 1 and while I is less than 6, I print. So it keeps on, first I will be 1, it prints, right? And then it says I is equal to plus equals to 1. This, if you remember, means that I is equal to I plus 1. So now I will become 2. Then again it will go into the loop, it will print. Then I will become 3. Then it will again print. Then 4, then it will print. Then 5, then it will print. But when it prints 5, in the next step, it will become 6. So now it says while I is less than 6, right? So 6 will not be possible, so it will stop, right? Is while loop clear to you? Like do you have a base idea of what it is? Okay, perfect. The for loop is sort of it iterates through all the values and the range that you give to it, right? So here you can see for x in range 1 comma 6, again as I said, starting comma end minus 1. That is how it works, right? Is that clear to everyone? Starting comma end minus 1. So here I would print 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, and then I'll stop because ending minus 1. Is that clear to everyone? Are loops clear to everyone? Perfect, perfect. I'll just go through the base notebook that we have. Tell me if this is clear, like this is visible to everyone. Okay, so we'll just go through this. This is sort of a basic notebook that I created. I will be sharing the link to this with everyone so that you can also go through this and download this and try it on your own. This is basically a very good introduction to what we have discussed today, and you can get an idea of how everything happens, right? So here you can see that I've named 4 variables and I've stored a number here that is an integer, right? I've stored a string, I've stored a float, I've stored a list, correct? I can print the number, I can print the string word, I can also say just name the variable and it prints hello, right? Here I can see that it is printing hello world, separator is backslash t. Now print, Pankaj, we do have do while loop. Again, as I said, this is a very basic introduction. That is why I went only with these basic loops. We will be focusing on loops primarily in the next session. That would be the main goal that we're looking into. So we will be going to do while and the intricacies of for and while in that session. Right. So we have this here separator t, basically, as I said, a comma by default takes the separator as space. So if I run it without separator, it will simply add a space. If I add something else, it just puts it sort of creates another separator. So for example, I say sep equals to rn, right? So the comma would be replaced by rn. And this is exactly how it works. By default, it is equal to a space, right? Correct. So now in the bottom, now we can see end. So what end means is that if I wouldn't be using end, it would be printing it in this manner. I'll just, yeah. So it is printing it here. End basically tells me what kind of a space. Yeah. So end basically tells me how do you want to end the line, the space post printing. Correct. Now we look into the mathematical functions. So a is equal to 10, b is equal to 5, basic variable assignment. We print a plus b 15, a minus b 5, a into b 50, a divided by b 2, a percentage b would be 0, remainder is always 0. Base division comes out to be 2, and that is basically, people had a doubt at floor division, I'll give you an idea. So a floor division means how many of B can sort of be inside A. So that means how many 5 can I fit inside a 10, right? It is 2. If I change this number to 11, every value here will change except this, because I can, even in 11 I can only fit 2 5s, right? Now if I change this number into 15, then I'll be able to see that this becomes 3. Is this clear to everyone? Whoever had a problem with floor division and everything? Perfect, perfect, perfect. Right. So now we are just printing a greater than b. This is a conditional. So this would return a boolean. Okay, Pankaj has a query. Okay, so Pankaj, think of it in this manner. A floor division B means that I want to put B items in A slots. Correct. So I have a box. A is equal to 10. So I have a box which has 10 compartments, and B equals to 5 means that I have 5 items. So how many B, that is 5 items, can I put? In 10, I can put 2 5s. Is that clear? Is this part correct? There can be 2 5s in a 10. Correct. In a 11 also, we can have only 2 5s. Is that clear? No. In 15, you can have three sets of 5s, right? In a 11, in if I have only 11 containers and I have to put I have to put 3 sets of 5. Won't 4 people be left, 4 items be left outside? Right? So we look at sort of the upper, like the lowest, the maximum number that I can put inside A when items are in B sets. Is it clear? Perfect. Perfect. So again, we have a less than b greater than b. Then we have raised to. So we have a raised to b. So we have 15 raised to 5. So we can see what the value actually is. Correct. Now here I've just made up a random sort of a set of values, and it is sort of printing it for me. So I'm just showing you that how multiple items can be put here, and this is exactly how it is print. Correct. Now we will look into lists. So we can see that list OG, that means the list original. This is a way of creating the list. Just put a square parentheses and put all the square brackets and put all the values inside. Another way to do it is put list, then I put range 1 comma 7. That means range 1 comma 7 would mean that it would go to every value starting to ending minus 1. So it will be 1 2 3 4 5 6. Same as this. Correct. Now this, what I'm doing is I'm creating it using a for loop. This is something that you can ignore for now. We will focus on this later in the next week. But this is a way of creating the list. And as you can see, the same result is achieved through these three manners. These are just ways of creation. I would prefer this. But if, for example, you have to create a list of 1 to 1 million, you will not be able to print everything, right? So you can use this or this. Correct? So this is how a list, you can create a list, right? This is the same thing. This just change the range parameter. You can have this. Correct, I'll just show this. Yeah. So currently, if you can see, we have created an empty list, right? I'm just showing you how you can add values in a list. Correct. So currently, if you can see, I'll just remove this. We don't need this. Yeah. So if you can see, we have an empty list here. Correct. If I print ls here without running this part of the code, I comment this, I will see an empty list. Is that clear? We're seeing an empty list. We've initialized an empty list. Is this clear for everyone? Perfect. So now if I want to add values to the list, I say for I in range. Again, as I said, if starting is not provided, it is equivalent to a 0, right? So I say this and I put append. So append means join in this list, correct? So now I'll be able to see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is joined. I will show this to you in a simpler manner. If I say want to append, add some value to this, so I say ls.append any number that we go for. So we say how many, we have 22 participants. So we just say ls.append 22, right? And then maybe we can print ls to check. So now we have an empty ls. Now we add the value 22. So you can see that 22 is here. Now I will add say a value 200, 2000 something. So that is also added. So is it clear how it append works in a list? Perfect, perfect. So that is how you append. Now I'm just showing you the types of data that you can have. So as you can see, we have a integer, we have a string, we have another list, we have a tuple, we have a dictionary inside, and all of that can be put inside a list. Yeah, in a list, correct? So this is how a list would work. Now, if you remember, we did a very similar thing in a string, correct? So what did we do in a string? We printed 0, so it would printed the first character, right? If we printed 2, we printed the third character. The same thing happens with list. We've done the same thing. So list 0 would bring out the first value. So it would be 1, correct? If I put -1, I'll just first I'll show you the 0. Okay? Then we'll move into negative values as well. Yeah, so we printed 1. Now, what does a negative, a minus number in this mean? A minus number, it is similar to a CT course. Ravi, it might be similar to a CT course, but this is more, yeah, it is sort of similar to a CT course because it also derives its pseudocode from Python, but you can see the parallels as you go along. Right. So a -1 inside this means that we will start the counting from behind. Correct. So if I do this, it goes to the last value. The first value at the end is 5. The dictionary, sorry. Right. So that is printed. Right. Now this one, if you see this without anything, without a starting, it takes it to be 0. Without an ending, it takes it to be the last value. So I can see all the values being printed. Correct. Now here you can see that we started the list with nothing. We had a null value there, so it is 0 by default, and I added 2, so it will print 0, 1, correct? or 2? Would it be only 0, 1, or would it be 0, 1, 2? I would like the 0th value or the 0th first and the second value. I would like to see an answer in the chat. Anything, you just put in if you would see only the 0th and the first value, or would you see 0, 1 and the second value as well? Okay, so I'll just run it and show it for everyone. So we'll see only the first two values, the 0th and the first value, because we go from starting to ending -1, right? So 0 and 1. Is that clear? I would like to see a yes here, please. Perfect. Perfect. Right? So this is again a value of say inserting and removing. So what insert does is the first value is the index we want the item to be added to. So index again 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the second part is the value that we want to add. Correct? So this is how an insert function would work. Remove removes that value based on the index that we've provided. Correct? And extend basically adds it to the end. Right. So this is sort of how the functions and lists work. Correct. This is everything about lists. We will go into depth again the next time we said we will be revising all of this. And I can understand some people would have some difficulties here. But what I'll do is I'll share this notebook. You can run it on your own and you will have a very good idea of what we are talking about. Correct. Now, when we move to tuples, you can see a very similar thing happening here. You can see that tuples can be created in multiple manners, multiple ways, as we did in the on the top. You can see that even a tuple can contain an integer, a string, a list, a tuple, another tuple inside a tuple, a dictionary. Correct? Now here again, as we printed for the list, exactly same in a similar manner, we will be printing for a tuple. Now, if you can see, TP0 is equal to 5. This gives us an error because does not tuple object does not support item assignment. What this means is that it is, tell me, you guys tell me, what is it? We just discussed it. A list allows item modification and the tuple does not. Correct. So we can have the values changed in a list but not in a tuple. Correct. So this is how it happens. But if I say I can say type TP0 is equal to 5, this would give me an error. If I want to say change the tuple, I would say TP, I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This would change the tuple for me because I'm changing the entire tuple, right? This works, but if I want to change this particular value, I cannot do that, right? That is how tuples would work, right? Yeah, so we can see the error, correct? Now on the bottom again, we can see how a tuple is created, right? We have a WR and you can see. Yeah, so if a tuple only has one value inside, it takes the type of the value as the complete type. So you can see an integer here. If I put hello, here, you will be able to see a string. Sorry. Is there a query?
बढ़िया भाई रे
Acha, okay. I think you unmuted. Like, could you please mute yourself again? Perfect. Yeah. So we have the so if it has only one value, it takes the type of that value, correct? And here, as you can see, it did come out to be a tuple because it has a comma, so it must have multiple values, right? I can add a hello here. Yes, you can see it. Similar goes for sets again. Create this in a create the sets in multiple manners, right? A set also can have multiple values, but a set will not have a list. If you can see in the in that difference chart as well, it is an unhashable type, right? What does this mean? So what does hashable like? I've just written a short description. All the mutable objects are unhashable. That means a list. See, apart from a tuple, and like in the when we talk about structures apart from tuple, every value can be changed based on index, right? But a tuple fails so. That is because it is an immutable object. Now every immutable object can be hashed, but but a mutable object is unhashable. So a set, what it does is it sort of indexes and sorts the values for you, sort of hashes the value for you. So it's easier for you to search, but a list does not support this. So a list will not be inside. Correct? So that is how it would work. If I remove this, I would be, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. If I remove this, I would be able to do it, right? So I removed the list from inside, I was able to do it. Correct? So a set will not have a set inside of it, but it can have a tuple inside of it. Correct? Or an integer inside of it. Correct? I'll just show that to you as well. Correct. So we can see that a set, it was easily done for us. Correct. Here we are hash. So this is sort of just shows if we can hash a value or not. Correct. So this is how it would work. Now, as you can see, unhashable type set, as I've said here. I get that this might be a little confusing for everyone, but this is something that you just have to understand that if it's mutable, it is not hashable. If it is immutable, it is hashable. It works in this opposite sense. Correct? Now we'll just scroll down a bit and you can see that how sets are being joined. So many of you who understand how sets and functions work in mathematics, union and intersection, all of this works. So what a union means is that if I say a union between A and B, it means that all values of A and all values of B are joined together. Correct? But because it's a set, repeated values are removed. So a union of these two would give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Because I have joined all values of 1 and 2 and the overlapping values as well. Correct? I'll just show that to you. Correct. This is the union. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And intersection means that the values that are common between the two. The duplicate, the repeated values are the only ones that are printed. Correct, you can see 3. Difference would be, as you can see, it is set A dot difference B. So the difference that the extra values that the set B has are removed, and only the values of set A are shown. So this means A but not B. So all values of A that are not in B will be printed. In the next line we do all values of B that are not in A are printed. So you can see 1, 2 and 4, 5 respectively. Correct? Is this part clear to you? Is everything till now clear, or do you have a base idea of what this is? We will be again hashing this in the next lecture as well. I would like a yes maybe in the chat. Okay, good. Good. So I have a good idea of how this works. So searching in sets happens in O1 because of the hashing. Correct? So again, as I said, it hashes and makes it easier for you to search. Here you can see that it is creating dictionaries and in multiple manners. So name, comma, key. So this means key, comma, value. Here it is saying name is equal to this and 2 is equal to this. So it will sort of create name John 2 2. So it will be name the it is both all four of these lines will be doing the same thing, but in different manners. Right. So we're putting two lists and zipping them together as a dictionary. We are putting into tuples and putting them as a dictionary. We're putting them manually. So all of these in this manner you do it. Correct. The keys in the dictionary should be hashable, right? So a key cannot be a list, a key cannot be a set, a key cannot be a dictionary, correct? So it has to be hashable. So you can see that this is, so if you go through this, unhashable type list, correct? So it has to be hashable. So a list will not be allowed here, right? It would have worked if it was the other way around. Similarly, you can see here I've created this. So a tuple can be this a key, correct? So this is this part I'm assuming is clear to everyone. You have to say a yes maybe in the chat. Correct. Yeah. So now you can see if you want to print only the keys, you just put in keys and parentheses to print it, and if you want to print only values, you do this. Correct. Then if this what this shows is that I can print any values based only on its key. So if I say John here and I comment out this line, I can print the score of John, right? But if I say put David, which does not exist, I can see that key error David. That means this key does not exist. So I can see only John and Max are there. So of course we cannot get David's score because we don't know it. Correct? Now what this shows us is that get scores for David. Again, David is non-existent, so I get the score. I put the score as 0, right? So I'm sort of getting the scores into this dictionary. So now I will be having my score there. Correct? This is how it would work. We do have dictionary as switch case and loops, but this is something that we will be focusing on in the next session. And this is sort of the majorly what we had to cover for today. And let's build a calculator. This is supposed to be sort of an on hands-on project, but I think we've exceeded the time today. So put this in the chat if you would like to say go through the construction of a calculator now, or should I give this sort of like an homework, or should I do it in the next session? You can put that in the chat. Would love to see a chat message, or maybe somebody could turn on their mic. Anything would work. Next session, I guess. Okay, so one is for now, one is for next session. Next session, next session, next session, next session. Okay, so let us do this. I will share a link for you for the notebook that we just visited. I will also sort of create a reference calculator, a base version of it, and put it in the same link. And you can go through it whenever you want. And then maybe once we're done with this, and in the next session when we come here next Sunday, I will again put the registration links there. All of us can join in there, right? So this is sort of telling you what is coming up next. So we'll just take a deeper look. We just had an introduction now. We'll look into the depth. PPT, I will put the PPT also in the same link. You will see it there. A deeper understanding of the loops and its applications, we have to do that. We will then look into functions, classes, objects, arguments, and basic mathematics. We will just look into it. You will get an introduction. You'll get an introduction of file handling and the introduction of libraries like NumPy, Python, Math, for you to sort of actually get into what we're trying to like. You get exactly what we're doing. So you'll see a lot of things that are automatically handled by the libraries, correct. So thank you for joining me. You can scan this QR for the link, and alternatively, I'll also share the link inside here. Join the group. There I will share the PPT and the link for the code in the group itself, like right there in the group. Correct. So I can see a couple of people have joined, others also join in. And one more thing that I would like to request you all, I have a short 5 question or so feedback form here. I would appreciate it if all of you could just fill it, and that would help me sort of better the schedule and better the course from for the next time, and that would be great. And if you have some friends or some people, siblings or anyone who would benefit from this program, I would encourage you to share the registration link which will be shared on the group, and the say the link for this WhatsApp group with them, so that we can sort of build a community where all of us can teach each other and all of us can grow and learn Python in the coming few weeks, right? Yeah, all of you can join it. All of you can go through the feedback, and I would request all of you if you could turn your cameras on so I can take a small picture of us all, and keep it maybe for record, or maybe just keep it so that it's a nice thing to have. I would really appreciate if all of you could turn your cameras on. Okay, I have 2 cameras on. Others too, please. Take a picture maybe and take a screenshot too. Others too, if you can just turn on your cameras, please. I can see three cameras on, so I would appreciate if everyone else could too turn the cameras on. Others too, like if you can, um, Indrajit, Angela, Nithin, Pooja, Avishkar, I think Achintya has already done it. Dia, Arnav, Rachit Singh, all of you could if you could turn your cameras on. Okay, I can see Nithin. Hello. I can see Chaitanya. Hello. Nice. Hi. We have a lot of people. I'll just click a small picture and I can also take a screenshot. Right, I can see a lot of people here. I'll just Perfect. So, thank you so much, guys, for joining me. And if anyone wants to, you can turn your cameras on and sort of just tell me how you found the session and sort of what do you want me to change, what do you want me to add, remove, if you want me to make it shorter, or if you want me to make it longer, any of it. Um I would welcome you to just turn your microphones on and let me know. If you'd like the content to be changed a bit, if you wanted to go more basic, or if you want something advanced to be added, anything, we can tweak that from the next session. I want this more to be a crowd.
Hey,
In,
I think
in,
the pace and the
yes,
content
please.
was really nice because me being a mechanical engineer and I was always scared of coding for no reason. But this, I think the session was really good.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We would like to sort of keep the pace here at this speed itself. Correct. Are there any is like does anyone else want to give a review or something? We can just sort of close this session up. I will be putting this recordings in a YouTube playlist and share the link with you. And we'll add one every Sunday and sort of create this as a workshop slash lecture series. And you guys can revise using that. And as I said, any of your friends who wants to join in, I will share the registration link on this group itself for the next week, maybe tomorrow or today or tomorrow. And you can share with all your friends and people who actually like to learn. And you think that would be a good addition to this team. I want this more to be a crowdsourced course. So whatever you tell me, I do. You want guest lectures, you want somebody else to teach, you want some other content to be taught. All of that I can schedule and sort of manage. So that is what I would like to encourage here. So you can have your friends join in the course. You can have your siblings. If you have younger siblings, you can have them join. Achintya here, he is he's a like a sibling of a friend of mine, and I used to teach in Python previously as well. So I can go at the children's pace and I can get a separate session for children every week as well. So if that is something you'd be interested in, you can send that in the chat in the WhatsApp group itself or in the feedback. Correct. So if there's anything else anyone would like to add, any suggestion or any review, I would appreciate it. Otherwise, all of you can leave. Welcome. Matt. Correct. Thank you so much. You guys are free to leave. If there's anything somebody would like to discuss, they can stay back and discuss with you. Thank you so much. So thank you so much. If there's anything anyone would like to say, you can share that on the WhatsApp group. I'll be sharing the link to the slides and the code there itself. Thank you so much. I'll just end this session now. It was lovely having you for this session. Thank you so much.